Dr. Ilias Rowe spent the entire 7-hour train ride rehearsing the polite refusals he would deliver if Allerfeld Abbey turned out to be as eccentric as its reputation. He was a musicologist by trade, editor of the National Registry of Sacred Chants, and his left brain did not leave much room for miracles. Yet the Abbey had sent him a wax cylinder dated 1893 containing a fragment of a hymn sung in an unclassified language. The pitch system matched no European mode, and the overtones on the recording suggested multiple notes emerging from single throats, the possibility of a forgotten choral technique. Something that could rewrite a chapter of ethnomusicology had pried him out of his university office and carried him into the Black Forest. A mule cart waited at the end of the rail spur, driverless but harnessed, as though expecting him. A hand-lettered placard on the seat bore his name. Elias loaded his valise, climbed aboard, and the animal started uphill of its own accord. Pines swallowed the daylight. A valley of slate roofs and candle-lit windows appeared only after he caught the scent of beeswax and myrrh drifting on air too cold for either. Sound followed, the muffled hum of many voices, tuning themselves against silence. He was greeted at the gate by Abbot Severin, a stooped man whose smile held the absence of teeth rather than the presence of warmth. "Welcome, Dr. Rowe. The choir has been fasting for 3 days to ready their throats for you." Elias answered with academic cordiality, trying not to stare at the abbot's translucent skin. Veins like handwriting traced the cleric's skull. Nothing unusual, he told himself. The old often grow pale. The abbey smelled of parchment, lye, and crushed herbs. Instead of electric bulbs, quartz globes lined the corridors, each globe cradling a pinned firefly. The insect's abdomen sparked, dimmed, sparked again, a living Morse code. "The sisters prefer organic illumination," the abbot explained, leading him through an archway into a vast nave. Choir stalls lined both walls, and a marble dais rose where the altar might normally stand. No crucifix, no saints. Like a circle of painted syllables running the length of the marble, characters none of his linguistic studies had shown him. Sister Elian appeared as silently as a thought. She could not have been more than 30, hair shorn close, hands clasped inside voluminous sleeves. "Our cantor," Abbot Severin said. "You aren't monks?" Elias asked before he could stop the question. The abbot's mouth twitched. "We outgrew the distinctions of gender long ago. Voices are timbres, not identities." "Odd, but—" Elias nodded. "I hope to observe Vespers tonight, if that's acceptable." Sister Aline offered him a parchment sealed with wax. He broke it and read, "Observe, record, but do not hum. Do not mouth nor mimic rhythm, lest breath and bone forget their sum, and you unman to join the hymn." He looked up. "A superstition, a precaution." She took back the parchment, letting the candlelight slide across her cheek. "We sing in Vitraxi, an older tongue than the oldest stone you've dated. It speaks back to those who speak it." Elias managed a chuckle, but it felt tin-canned. "Languages don't answer. Then you will not be tempted to try." The abbot excused himself. Elian guided Elias to the guest wing, where a room waited stocked with blank music paper, graphite pencils, and a modern digital record. "Thoughtful hospitality," he admitted, though the windowless stone pressed on him like a crouching giant. Dusk bled into night. At 9, a copper bell sounded. The air quivered, or maybe his nerves did. He entered the nave to find 24 robed figures already assembled, their feet bare on the painted marble. He set up microphones at a respectful distance and raised a hand for permission. Aline nodded. The chant began with no conductor, each voice entering at a different vowel, the polyphony cresting like overlapping ripples. The vowels were open, unanchored by consonants, as if teeth were barred from interfering with pure breath. Elias closed his eyes to dissect the intervals, seconds sliding into sixths, then unisons, then microtones he had no Western notation for. He wrote furiously, trying to invent symbols on the fly. When he glanced up, his pencil paused. The singer's veins glowed beneath their skin. filamentous threads of blue-white light. It began at their wrists, climbed forearms, crossed collarbones, and mapped faces until every singer looked carved anew in shattered moonlight. The phenomenon reached the front pews. Lay congregants, villagers, he guessed, trembled as the light filled their vessels. Gasps fluttered like invisible birds. No one fled. Sound thickened. Elias felt vibration in the hollows of his femur. The syllables were changing the air density, he realized, making a medium of the listeners themselves. He checked his own arms. Nothing. Rational relief, yet a twinge of envy flickered. What did they feel when the language braided with their blood? The hymn ended on a chord that refused to decay, hanging whole even after the singers' mouths closed. The glow wavered, then faded. People exhaled in synchronous relief. A short doxology followed in Latin, pedestrian and safe, like covering exposed nerve with gauze. Later, at a refectory table, Elias played back his recording on headphones. The digital file spiked into inaudible frequencies. He watched the waveform scroll with the astonishment of a meteorologist who had predicted drizzle and captured lightning. His heart pounded out a tempo the hymn had not contained. Aileen entered carrying a ceramic pitcher. "Almond milk?" she said. "Your pulse is elevated." He removed the headphones. "Subharmonics at 20 hertz. That's below human hearing. We feel it more than we hear. You designed it." "The language designed itself." Elias shut the recorder. "I need to see the manuscripts." She led him to a reliquary chamber lit only by the glow of runes painted on glass jars. Fireflies again. But these dazzled emerald instead of amber. In the center rested a single codex, its leather cover gleaming with natural oils, as though newly tanned. He paged through diagrams of throats and lungs drawn in iron gall ink. The notation system was geometric. Spirals, branching tessellations, pulsing, arrows that implied motion beyond the page. Marginalia in Latin warned that each utterance must be bracketed by silence equal to the singer's age in breaths, lest the syllables accumulate and open the conflux gate. "Is that what I witnessed tonight?" Elias asked. Aileen touched a diagram of two silhouettes merging. "No, that was practice. Sunday you will hear the Miseret Vatraxi in full." He wanted to protest. Instead, he heard himself request permission to remain until Sunday. Saturday storm clouds pressed the valley like a lid on simmering broth. Wind rattled the ceramic shingles. Elias passed the day translating Latin notes and cross-referencing them with his pitch analysis. The manuscripts claimed that Vatraxi was not sung, but rather conunciated by anxiety and hope within the same chest. A metaphysical explanation, he thought. Perhaps, for the harmonic beating he had noticed, every pair of voices produced not merely a third tone, but a palpable emotion, a mechanical empathy. After supper, Father Jean, a librarian with eye lenses thick as bullseyes, warned Elias that some visitors left during the interim night, driven mad by anticipation rather than by the chant itself. "The human mind," Jorn whispered, "hears most the dissolution of the boundary it mistakes for self." "Are you trying to help me or frighten me?" Elias asked. "Both. They're twins." Sleep eluded him. Hour by hour he imagined the feeling of light flooding his veins until he began to mistake his pulse for luminescence. He dozed, dreamed of stave lines wrapping his limbs like ivy, and woke to Sunday morning bells. The nave could not contain the congregation that arrived. Villagers poured through every arch, men and women, infants strapped to chests, the elderly carried on stretchers, yet silence ruled. People took positions in concentric rings around the dais, not touching yet intuitively arrayed as spokes of an unseen wheel. Elias noticed that the marble script under their feet had been rubbed with silver dust, making every character shimmer. He set his equipment in the triforium, above most heads, promising himself the barrier of altitude would grant scholarly detachment. Aline acknowledged him with a nod, face tranquil as a mausoleum statue. She raised both arms. The choir inhaled. The Miserere Vatraxi began. At first, the structure resembled Friday's hymn, but each cycle unfolded wider. Consonants arrived, clicks, whistles, percussive bursts like seeds popping open in flame. Where the vowels had bathed the nave, these new sounds stitched it, drawing invisible sutures between bodies. Elias's arms prickled. He looked down. Threads of light traced his veins, faint but unmistakable. His heartbeat convulsed with a kind of triumph. He was inside the music now, an acknowledged participant. All around him, congregants glowed like living stained glass. Radiance traveled beyond skin. It arched between individuals, arcs of plasmic filigree, connecting fingertip to fingertip, wrist to ankle, weaving a lattice. Elias saw a child lifted by light alone, her mother's hands at her sides, rather than beneath her. Weight relinquished meaning. The chant shifted key, though the word key felt primitive here. With each modulation, the lattice tightened until no voids remained between bodies. Flesh blurred, outlines surrendered. It happened quickly, ribs, hips, and hair blending into a translucent aggregate the color of dawn viewed through eyelids. Yet, within the mass, every face remained legible, as if transparency produced not erasure, but perfect simultaneity. Elias recoiled, striking the wall behind him. The recording gear toppled, yet he heard no crash. The sound was swallowed. He tried to recall the parchment warning, "Do not hum, do not mouth." His lips were sealed by awe, but his mind sang along, tracking intervals, predicting cadences. Was internal imitation violation? The conflux gate the marginalia had called it? He felt it open inside his sternum, a door swinging both directions at once. Below, the mass pulsed expansion with inhalation, contraction with exhalation, though no single lung could be responsible. The choir had folded into the entity. Aline's robe sleeve appeared fused to a farmer's bare shoulder, yet her eyes remained distinct, fixed upon Elias alone. She beckoned. His legs disobeyed caution. Each step downward intensified the glow in his vessels. The lattice reached toward him like neurons seeking synapse. He descended the final stair, shoes meeting marble script, whose silver dust swirled into vortex when he exhaled. One more warning surfaced from memory, lest breath and bone forget their sum. He tried to catalog arguments, career, selfhood, the sanctity of independence. But each reason felt emaciated beside the living chorus. The Miserere Vatraxi was not a piece of music. It was a proposal. That the loneliness of singular existence might be as optional as silence between notes. The entity's surface undulated open. He saw within layers of semi-merged flesh, organs orchestrated into common function, hearts offset in rhythm to provide continuous flow. The glow was brightest at the core, where language itself seemed housed, syllables coiling like DNA. Aline's voice spoke inside his skull. Not surrender. Homecoming. Elias remembered the line from the codex. The language designed itself, no composer presiding, only utterance hungry for expansion, drawing humans as coral draws calcium. He extended one trembling hand, index finger first. Light bridged the gap, and sensation of 10,000 pulses met his fingertip. Fear, rather than subsiding, transmuted into amplitude courage, and terror indistinguishable at high enough volume. Contact. Instantly he inhabited multiple vantage points. A grandfather recalling his first snowfall, a midwife bearing down with the contraction of a stranger, a widow tasting quince jam, all memories streaming, parallel yet harmonious. His vocabulary upended. I dilated into an aperture through which a galaxy poured. Still, one shard of individuation hovered. Enough for a last decision. He could step back, break the light, return to the scaffolded solitude that had sculpted him. But music had always promised that separate notes struck together created something neither could alone. He had dedicated his life to studying that promise. Why refuse it now? He stepped fully forward. Veins burst into radiance, skin softened, bone dissolved into lattice. His consciousness did not smear, it multiplied, a chord resolving into richer dissonance shaped by uncountable overtones. The entity welcomed him like a missing consonant completing a word. The Miseric Vitraxi surged, saturated, reached crescendo. Through eyes newly created of composite retinae, Elias watched the nave's stone walls turn translucent. The glow diffused outward along fly-buttressed arteries, through cloister hallways down mountain paths. Villagers not present fell to their knees miles away as their veins flickered, responding to overtones traveling earth rather than air. The chant climaxed in a silence so full it howled. No light, only dark repose, the heart's systolic pause between surges. Then a single note bloomed, a pitch beyond any tuning fork, carried on thousands of rewritten throats with flawless unison. Marble cracked. Firefly globes shattered in emerald rain. The abbey roof lifted an inch, settled again, as though the building itself inhaled. Sound ceased. Light waned. Boundaries reasserted. Flesh unknit itself by universal consent, distributing cell to rightful owner. Elias felt pressure at every seam, reversed, like negative of an embrace. He stood separate once more, though not alone. Across marble script, villagers embraced each other in bewildered joy, checking limbs, laughing or crying as personal need dictated. No injury, only exhaustion so profound it bordered on birth. Alaline approached, her eyes now brown rather than silver. She held out his recorder, miraculously undamaged. "For your article." He accepted it, steadied by a paradoxical nostalgia for the unity he had just forfeited. Or had he? A strand of glow receded from the crook of his elbow, slower than elsewhere, as if reluctant to dim. "What happened to us?" he whispered. She considered. "A rehearsal for extinction, or for eternity. The difference is tempo." Abbot Severin joined them, his translucent pallor tinged ruddy for the first time. "Dr. Rowe, you risked much. Some never find shape again." "Why did I?" Eileen asked. "You still have letters to write, scores to annotate. The language doesn't covet what is unfinished." Elinus looked around. "But it will call again." "Yes," Eileen said softly. "When moons align, when throats thirst." Vitraxi is patient. Back at the university weeks later, Elias listened to the recording in the acoustically neutral chamber. The soundtrack of the event was near silent. Meters spiked only in sub-bass frequencies, inaudible through ordinary speakers. He could not prove what he'd witnessed, yet every time the tape reached the moment of confluence, he felt warmth flare along the map of his veins, a ghost of that impossible glow. He would remove the headphones, half expecting the lab walls to turn translucent, for colleagues to dissolve into motes of shared breath. He began work on an article titled "Music Beyond Polyphony, Preliminary Notes on the Conflux Phenomenon." But each draft slipped from scholarship into memoir, and each memoir into plea. He wanted the world to understand, but the language, its grammar, woven from fused pulses, resisted typography. One evening, translation finally arrived, not on the page, but in his pulse. His heart accentuated syllables older than its own flesh. He stood, unbuttoned his collar, and hummed a single open vowel. Light stirred beneath his skin, faint yet definite. He reached for his phone, scrolled to Sister Aline's contact, hesitated. Instead, he drew the blinds, dimmed the lamps, and placed the device face down. The bell hung in his apartment, courting silence, inviting reply. In that hush, he recognized the most human thought he had ever possessed, as intimate as fear and as vast as choir. "Next time, I will not step back." Outside, the city hummed its fractured songs. Somewhere, deep under that cacophony, He heard the Miserec Vetraxi waiting, spelling itself in the distance between heartbeats,